If you want to understand how brutal the North Atlantic really is, don't look at a map. Look at a Viking longship that survived decades of salt spray, freezing rain, and relentless impact without peeling, blistering, or rotting. No plastic coatings, no synthetic sealants, just wood, fire, fat, and chemistry so effective that even after World War II, navies were still studying why it worked so well. This isn't folklore. This is a lost waterproofing system that modern wood finishes still struggle to outperform. Now, let's get straight into it. The Vikings didn't paint wood, they transformed it. The first thing to understand is that Vikings were not coating their ships. They were permanently altering the structure of the wood itself. Modern finishes sit on top. Viking protection went inside. That difference is everything. Their method relied on a blend of pine tar and animal fat, applied hot, driven deep into the timber fibres. Pine tar alone is water-resistant. Fat alone repels moisture. But combined and heat-infused, something else happens. The mixture penetrates, swells the fibres, seals internal capillaries and creates a flexible, living barrier that moves with the wood instead of cracking against it. This is why Viking ships didn't fail when the planks flexed in heavy seas. Modern varnish fractures. Viking treated wood, absorbed stress and shrugged it off. So, pine tar often gets romanticized, but honestly, it's only half the story. Vikings produced it slowly, by cooking resin-rich pine roots and stumps in these low-oxygen pits. This wasn't just some casual campfire work. It was, in fact, controlled thermal chemistry. The result was a thick, antiseptic liquid absolutely packed with phenols and resin acids. These compounds are naturally hostile to bacteria, fungi and insects, and that alone slowed rot dramatically. But pine tar by itself, well, it dries brittle over time. And that's where the second ingredient really mattered. Animal fat. Rendered fat from cattle, sheep, or even fish oil was blended into the tar while it was still hot. This softened the mixture, increased elasticity, and improved water shedding. It also prevented the tar from becoming glassy in cold weather, which is honestly critical when ice is slamming into your hull. This wasn't just guesswork. This was iteration learned through failure, storms, and shipwrecks. Here's where, honestly, most modern recreations fail. Vikings didn't just, brush this mixture onto cold wood. They actually heated the wood itself. Planks were warmed near fire pits, or sometimes in the sun, until the surface pores opened up. Then the hot tar-fat blend was applied while both materials were still hot. This created a kind of vacuum effect as the wood cooled, pulling the mixture deep into the grain. And, well, this step really changed everything. Instead of just sitting on the surface, the sealant actually became part of the wood's internal structure. Water couldn't travel through those capillaries anymore. The fibres were physically blocked and chemically altered. And that's why Viking ships could be dragged onto beaches, left wet for days, and relaunched without catastrophic swelling or decay. Once infused, the mixture triggered a reaction at the fibre level. Cellulose strands absorbed the oils and resins, expanding slightly and locking together. This reduced internal voids where water normally migrates. The surface didn't become slick like varnish. It became hydrophobic, in a different way. Water didn't cling. It ran. Salt couldn't crystallize inside. Ice couldn't wedge fibers apart. That water-shedding effect is why Viking ships didn't delaminate like modern plywood boats. They were built for saturation, not avoidance. Flexibility mattered more than hardness. Modern finishes chase hardness. Vikings chased resilience. Their ships flexed intentionally. Overlapping planks, known today as clinker construction, moved with waves instead of resisting them. A brittle coating would have failed instantly. The tar fat infusion, stayed rubbery even in freezing temperatures. When waves slammed the hull, the wood would bend and then return, all without those tiny microfractures that usually spell trouble. Over the years, this actually prevented the slow death that modern boats often suffer when their finishes crack in ways you just can't see. And, well, this same principle applies to cabins, tool handles, fences, and exposed beams. Wood, it survives much longer when it can breathe and move without letting water get trapped inside. During World War II, several navies, interestingly enough, revisited these traditional tar treatments for their wooden vessels, docks, and pilings. Synthetic coatings, they just failed under constant immersion. But those old tar systems didn't. The lesson was, honestly, a bit uncomfortable. Industrial chemistry hadn't fully replaced ancient methods. It had just made them faster and cheaper, not really better. Even today, pine tar blends are used on traditional boats because, honestly, they outperform many modern products in real wet conditions. So, how do you apply this method today without, a Viking village? Well, you don't need a longship or a fjord to use this. Start with real pine tar, not those diluted decorative versions sold for fences. Heat it slowly until it's fluid, but never boiling. Rendered animal fat works best, though tallow substitutes are, acceptable. Blend until smooth, aiming for a consistency like, warm syrup. Heat the wood gently. Sun exposure works, and a heat gun works faster. The wood should be warm to the touch, not scorching. So, you'll want to apply the mixture hot, using a natural bristle brush or, just a cloth. Let it soak in for a bit. While it's still warm, go ahead and reapply. Then simply wipe off any excess. Now allow it to cure slowly, over days, not hours. The smell, it will fade. But the protection, that will not. Boat builders already know this, but honestly, homesteaders and survivalists should pay attention too. Tool handles treated this way resist cracking and rot, even when left outdoors. Fence posts, they last longer without using chemical preservatives. Cabin beams, in damp climates, they stay mold-free. Canoes and kayaks actually gain impact resistance instead of just becoming brittle. Even storage chests benefit, Vikings used this method to protect cargo holds from constant moisture exposure. Your food storage, weapon racks and outdoor furniture can benefit in exactly the same way. Industrialization didn't erase this method because it failed. No, not at all. It was lost because it was slow, messy, and honestly smelled terrible. Factories wanted fast-drying finishes and predictable schedules. But you see, speed is the enemy of durability. The Vikings accepted that protection took time: heat, absorption, reapplication, and maintenance. That mindset is honestly what kept their ships operational for decades in the harshest waters on Earth. This isn't nostalgia, it's field-tested survival science. What makes this method powerful isn't romance, it's evidence. Archaeological finds, preserved ship fragments and, well, performance in salt water and ice. When you treat wood this way, you're not copying history for fun. You're using a system refined by people whose survival depended on it. That's the difference between decorative craftsmanship and functional mastery. If you care about materials, longevity and self-reliance, this is knowledge worth reviving. And if you want more deep dives into lost methods that actually worked, methods tested by weather, war and time itself, make sure you subscribe to Old World Prep. Share this with someone who still believes modern always means better. We'll keep digging up what history tried to bury.